Now, the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson has decided that Chinese tech giant Huawei will be granted a limited role in building the UK's 5G mobile network. In doing so, however, he risks the ire of US President Donald Trump, who'd pressured him to keep Huawei out. The US suspects China's government could use Huawei's role in next-generation communications to steal secrets. Let's go live to London now. Our correspondent there is Nadim Barber. So it sounds like a bit of a fudge, really. So the British government allowing Huawei in, but not to everything.
You could call it a fudge. It was definitely predicted in the last 24 hours, this restricted access for Huawei, something along the lines of what the previous Prime Minister, Theresa May, actually decided on before she was ousted from power. The British government have, in the last week or so, come under pressure, particularly from the US, but from critics within their own governing Conservative Party as well, over the security worries about Huawei. But a crucial feature of the UK is that Huawei is already significantly involved in the existing 4G network. And advocates of what the government's just announced say that this means that it will be cheaper to progress to 5G using existing infrastructure that Huawei has already built in Britain, while maintaining safeguards on security and national sovereignty. Now, the decision at that meeting involving cabinet ministers and intelligence officials will recommend to the network operators here in the UK that they exclude what they call high-risk vendors, such as Huawei, from safety-related networks in national infrastructure, from security-critical core functions, in other words, sensitive parts of the 5G network to do with how it actually works, and exclude them from sensitive geographical locations such as near military bases. Ministers in the last hour have put out statements saying that this will guarantee that Britain can move ahead with the rollout of higher connectivity, allowing people to download films more quickly, but more importantly, things like health applications, health devices that can be remotely accessed, self-driving cars and so on, while keeping hold of national safety. But that's still a moot point among people who are highly critical of China's human rights record, but not just that, China's reported involvement in espionage over the last few years.
Right, and so the Americans are not going to be particularly happy, are they, given this kind of compromise deal that Boris Johnson's government's come up with?
It's going to be fascinating the next few days. Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, will be in London on Wednesday. Now, he has warned, he and his administration have warned the British government that if Huawei were given the go-ahead to take part in 5G, the 5G rollout, then the US could actually review its intelligence sharing operations with the United Kingdom. They're both members of something called the Five Eyes Alliance, taking in the US, Canada, Britain, Australia and New Zealand. Now, that could just be hyperbole, but Britain's already angling for a good trade deal after Brexit, which is happening at the end of this month. Some people say that they will be very much concerned about US pressure, particularly with the US-China trade war in the background. But they've gone ahead with this, as you were calling it, a fudge, this restricted access for Huawei, insisting that it's always been treated as a high-risk vendor anyway. And so all of the security risks have been, if you like, ring-fenced. But it probably won't be enough to allay all of their critics' fears. The crucial point will be, how does the US react?
All right, Nadim, thanks for that. Nadim Barber, our correspondent live in London there. Right, now we can speak to Simon Lacey, who's a former Vice President of Huawei Technologies in Shenzhen. Now he's a lecturer in international trade at the University of Adelaide in Australia. He's joining us live from there. Thank you for talking to us. Are the United States, Australia, where you are, the New Zealanders, the Canadians and the Brits, are they right to be concerned about the possibility of surveillance or even sabotage by installing Huawei systems?
Well, look, I think cybersecurity experts the world over agree that the risks aren't really inherent to the country of origin of the vendor, but rather the different points of ingress, and also from the device level, actually, and from the user level, the risks are much greater. And I think. I think that the Johnson government has really taken a sensible decision here, because security experts in the UK, the national security experts have affirmed on multiple occasions that they believe that the potential risks that Huawei poses can be mitigated by technical measures.
Right, so you believe, that was what I was going to ask you, actually. You do believe that technically it's actually possible, is it, to allow Huawei, a suspicious contractor, if you like, into your system, and to keep them out of those parts of the system that you deem to be hypersensitive? That's possible?
Look, I think that's sort of a political compromise that was necessary. But remember that Huawei, I mean, allowing Huawei into the radio access network and not the core is a compromise that sits perfectly well with Huawei, because that's definitely the most valuable part of the network, the radio access network. I mean, all these mobile base stations. And also it's where Huawei is by far way ahead of its competitors. And so it's where Huawei also has the greatest competitive advantage.
And so do you think that the addition of Huawei then to the British system is likely to compromise, if you like, this collaboration between the UK and the four other Western organisations, the four other Western governments, in terms of their intelligence sharing and collaboration?
Well, I think we need to, as your correspondent mentioned, I think we need to see how this plays out over the next few days. But, I mean, if you remember back to the Edward Snowden case, the US were as dependent on the UK as vice versa in terms of intelligence sharing. And the US actually liked to rely on their counterpart, the NSA counterpart in the UK, to do some of the intelligence gathering for them, because they weren't as constrained by constitutional constraints in the US to spy on their own citizens. So I think the US might actually be hobbling itself if it chooses not to share intelligence with the UK. So I think that might end up being a rather empty threat.
All right. Simon Lacey, thank you very much indeed for talking to us live via Skype from Adelaide in Australia. Thank you.